Hi everyone. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. I realize it is 5:32, but we'll let a few people join here in just a second. All right. Hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Katie Totman. I am a historic preservation specialist with the Office of Historic Preservation. And today, this is our second installment of our 2021 virtual speaker series as part of the Rehabber Club. And today I'm going to talk about restoring original wood windows, a few housekeeping things just real quick. Feel free to drop your questions into the chat. And if you want to go ahead and send them to everybody or to Stephanie Phillips directly, she's going to help me monitor the questions. And we can actually go ahead. I'll try to address them as we go along versus waiting till the very end, mainly because with technical presentations like this, it's easier for me to quickly address them as we go. And that way we don't have a bunch of questions at the end. There will still be time for that, of course. So just free. And this is also being recorded, so this will be available on our YouTube channel. I would say probably check back next week, and we'll also be sending out a follow-up email as well. So without further ado, I will get started. Again, my name is Katie, and the presentation today, I'm going to talk a lot about, actually, I'm basically going to take you on a tour of my own house, and looking at some of the windows that I've worked on, and there are still a few to go, but just kind of just sharing with you kind of my journey and how I fell in love with wood windows, and just some tips and tricks on how to get started if you're, if you're a homeowner, if you're someone who's looking to do it professionally, just anything that I can do to help. And I look a little bit dark. Let me turn on a light really quick. I'm sorry. Hopefully that will help. Okay. So usually when I teach these classes, I like to start with just some window terminology, mainly because I try not to assume that everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say sash or 1/1 or muntin, those kinds of things. So if you already know the terms, awesome. If not, I'm happy to share these with you. So here we have, let's see here. So when we talk about windows, we usually refer to the sashes first. And so as you can see on this slide here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but on the left side, you have a window. It's a 9/9, which, and I'll get to this on the next slide, but I can talk about it here too briefly. So the lights we refer to are the individual panes of glass in each sash. And the sash is the piece of the part of the window that functions, that goes up and down, outward if you have a casement, inward, side to side, all of that. And we have a top and a bottom, or upper and lower sash, however you want to look at it. And then on the right side, the sash are made up of rails and stiles. And so the rails are the horizontal pieces, and the stiles are the vertical pieces. And I'm sorry, I didn't highlight the stiles, but those are the pieces here on the side. And the rails are really called meeting rails. A lot of times you'll hear people say that. And so just keeping that in mind. And I love these windows. This was at a plantation called Nottoway in Louisiana. And if you've never been, I would recommend you go when they open again. All right. So here we have, so I talked about the panes of glass and the 1/1s. So when we refer to the style of window, it's usually, we're talking about, again, the number of panes of glass in the top sash, and then we say over the number of panes in the bottom sash. So the house here on the lower left would be a 2/2. And then the picture on the right would be a, gosh, I think that's like an 18/1. And then the windows and the lights around the door. So the top here, I don't know, again, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but on the house here at the bottom, you'll have, this here is a transom. And so these are seen on exterior and interior. And in many times in the on the interior, they would be functional to help with ventilation inside the house. And you can see here as well above this door and these two windows. And these are actually fixed. There's no hardware for them to open. Maybe they did once upon a time, but there was no indication. And this is actually, if any of you are familiar with the Kelso house over in Monte Vista, this is under their front porch. All right, so this is my obligatory lead paint safety slide. I definitely wanted to touch base on this because it does come up a lot with not only with individuals talking with OHP, but at a lot of the conferences I go to and other workshops. It's very important to understand, what you're working with and being exposed to. So typically, if the house was built before 1970, you can safely assume that the paint on the house probably has lead in it. Personally, I prefer to work, just act as though the house does have lead paint and just take those safety precautions. There are tests out there that you can do if you want to be 100% certain. But if you want to avoid that, that's perfectly okay. And just, again, take the precautions before you start working. Some of the ways you can protect yourself are when you're removing lead paint, always wear a respirator. I have one here. It looks like this. And I'll show this more where you can see it a little bit better at the end when my slide goes away. But it's a P100 is the filter rating that you want to look for, which is it's rated to capture that dust so you don't inhale it. Always wear eye protection, gloves, long sleeves. You can also, if you don't have like a back room or a mud room or something where you can just come in the house and, you know, get rid of your lead paint covered clothes, you can wear disposable coveralls. They do sell those. I've seen them a lot at Lowe's and Home Depot, so they are pretty accessible. And it's just a, you know, disposable, just full body suit that you wear. So that way, you know, before you go in the house, especially if you have little kids, pets, it's just something easy to discard quickly. Another way to help avoid dust, particles, all of that, are to spray the surfaces with a little bit of water before you scrape. And that's going to help too. And then also lay down plastic or other disposable tarping around the area where the paint is being removed, just so it can be captured. You can bag it up and dispose of it when you're done. Use the homeowner, and I meant to do a little more research on this, but from what I understand, if you're the homeowner doing this work, just be sure to capture it, and you can dispose of it in your regular garbage can. If it's a commercial property, or if you're somebody, a contractor, you know, actually doing this work for somebody for money, there are regulations that the state and the EPA have that individuals need to abide by. And there's a, I don't have a link here, but it's certainly something, if you guys have questions, I can share information with you if you want afterwards, or you can email us later, whenever. All right, so I live in New Braunfels, Texas. If anybody has been there, awesome. I hope you love it. I've lived here for, I think, about 6 years, 7 years. We actually live right across the street from Schlitterbahn, which you would think would be amazing, but during the summer, it's bananas. Just people everywhere. But these are just some of the houses and buildings that I love to go on walks in my neighborhood, and we live close enough to downtown that, I mean, I can walk there in like 10 minutes. So just, I love to take pictures of my neighborhood. So here is my house. It is a very simple example of a folk Victorian. This style is really common in New Braunfels and in San Antonio. Some of the common features include, you can, and there's a next slide where I'll show you kind of the footprint, but it's an L-shaped footprint. It's got front porch here that's been enclosed once upon a time. We've got these, it's a front-facing gable with gable returns to kind of create that, that visual space between the gable and the wall plane here. And then I have 8 original double hung 1/1 windows. So remember, the sash is 1 piece of glass over 1 piece of glass, and they're double hung, so that means both sash function. So they both have weights and can go up and down. It also needs a paint job. Please don't fault me for that too much. That's on our to-do list for this summer, I hope. And the color is probably going to change from white to like a gray or gray blue or something like that. We'll see. I need to talk to my better half about that. Anyway, moving right along. Here are, so just to kind of give you a perspective, if you're familiar with New Braunfels, even if you're not. So here's a 1920s map. Our house, I think, was built before 1920. I'm still trying to do some research on that. But so here is the Comal River. Schlitterbahn would be about right here, the original Schlitterbahn. So we're right here on the corner. And then if you were to go kind of down the street here, downtown New Braunfels would be this way. So you can see my L-shaped footprint here. And then there's a back enclosed porch that was added probably in the 60s or so. All right, so let's get to the fun stuff. Window conditions and assessments. So this is probably the worst window on my house. As you can see, just by looking at it, I mean, it looks like it's in very rough condition, right? Sometimes just the peeling paint makes it look worse than it really is. And so until you get that paint off, it's really hard to fully assess what could be in need of repair or other maintenance. So you can see here in this top right-hand corner, so the sill itself that kind of juts out here is actually really solid. It didn't have any damage. It's just, it's on the inside here that had a lot of dry rot and it was failing. And then this is an even better shot of that craziness. And you can see the glazing here is falling out. It needs paint. It needs a lot of help. So in looking at this, when this was taken, I really wasn't comfortable. I mean, we didn't have the tools either to really replace and like fabricate a new sill. So I explored other options, and I decided to dig out as much as I could that was spongy. And that still left me with a lot that was solid and could potentially be filled. And so I chose to fill these voids with a wood epox, specifically called Abitron. And the materials and things I'm going to mention, by no means is it an endorsement. Technically, it's just they're products that I've personally used and have had success with. I always encourage folks to do your homework and research products, test them out, find what works best for you and the material. So yeah, so this was in pretty rough shape. And so you can see here, so like I said, I dug out a lot of what I could. Here's that. And then I filled those voids with Abitron. So this is what it looked like afterwards. And I'll show you a picture here. From the picture here on the right, it looks like it's completely filled like to the top. It's not. But it is a material that you can build up and create, basically form it out to where it's going to basically adhere to whatever shape you mold it into, which is really cool. So yeah, here you can see, I filled it enough, and it's had plenty of time to cure. So I can add to this, and the window around the corner, I mean, they all have the same sill profile. So I can use that as a guide and just build it up enough to where it's going to look like an actual wood sill. And hopefully it'll last me another 100 years. We will see. And then two, I mean, you can see here I reglazed the sash here and painted it. And then here's a before and after. The top sash needs to be fully painted, one day at a time. But I mean, look at the drastic before and after. I love before and afters. Again, like it really, in this case, I mean, there were some challenges with some of the rails needed to be resecured, but overall, the sashes really just needed to be stripped, primed, and painted, and then reglazed. And it's in my opinion, I think it's a big difference in a good way. Okay, so hopefully my video works. And I just saw a question pop up. Yes, that glass is original. I know it doesn't look super wavy, but it's a little wavy. There's other windows in my house that have more of a wave to them, but yes, those do have wavy glass. Okay, hopefully my video will work, and I'm going to narrate this for you because the volume I don't think is going to be super great to hear, so just bear with me. So this is looking at potential moisture and paint challenges. as you can see, and hopefully it's not shaky, but you can see we have a window unit here on this window, and we used to have one in the bedroom. It's just the house no longer has central heat and AC, and we're looking to maybe do something else. If you have window units, I would recommend, if you can, build kind of like a caddy or something that's going to get it up off of the sill, if you can, because I mean, as you can see, there's a little bit of, I mean, there's probably water damage. This sill was actually really solid to the touch. So, I mean, there may be some underlying issues that we haven't found yet. But once that window unit comes out, I'm sure we'll get to address all of that stuff. And I mean, otherwise you can do potentially like in the wall. I've seen those before, but again, you're being really invasive on the house. And then two, I mean, this one, in addition to that, again, just failing paint, you know, caulking issues, glazing. The top sash looks like it has some water damage. And here you can see I've got condensation, my poor windows, guys. And this, a lot of times you'll see, instead of glazing, it's caulking, which, I mean, you can use that. It's just, it's not a very compatible or easy to work with material, and there are better products for reglazing. And I will be happy to, I'm going to share some of those with you as we move along. But yeah, you can see here the glazing is failing, you know, paint's failing. And I think I'll pan up. Yeah, there's a little bit of water damage there on the sash. Steph, did we have any more questions pop up?
Yeah, we have one about Abitron. Does it expand and contract with temperature? There's some concern about cracking long term.
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't have the answer. However, I can point you to, there is Scott Seidler of the Craftsman blog. He's done like a really extensive study on the different wood fillers and how they, you know, how they expand and contract and fare over the years. I can certainly share that or drop that in the chat a little bit later. Oh, perfect. But I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that. But the one that I did hasn't been on there in there long enough. Like I would want to like see what it does in a year or so. But that's not something I've done. I apologize. But good question. Let's move along. Okay, so here, another video. So this is my front porch. Whoops. My front porch that you saw earlier was enclosed. We've got two front doors, which is pretty common for a folk Victorian. And then we've got one window here off of the living area, and then one off of the bedroom. And I will zoom in here just a second to show you the glazing condition. Because that's one actually really simple thing that you can do and assess on your windows is the condition of the glazing. This one here, you can see it's failing and cracking, and it's at its lifespan pretty much. So this definitely would need to be replaced. A lot of my friends and colleagues who do this professionally will put the sashes, once they're removed, in a steam box. And this helps get the glazing putty pliable, and just it's easier to remove, and you avoid breaking glass if you can help it. And then this one has some caulking, as we talked about earlier, and it doesn't look as clean as traditional glazing putty. And then you can inspect the casing and the sill. And like I mentioned earlier, this sill is this one is in pretty good shape, but the one that had the Abitron looked the same as this one, and so you can use the existing subsil here as just as a guide to make sure you get the right dimensions. And then when I first started doing this, I pulled off the exterior casing here. You can see this, and that's why it's all wonky. I will show you in the next few slides the easier way to access the weights to replace sash cords that are broken.
Katie, we have another question.
Yes.
Timothy has replaced glaze and has had it crack and fail in a few years. Do you have any tips for how to get a good long-term glaze installation?
Yeah, what product were you using, if you remember?
He's not sure.
Okay, that's okay. I have been told, like in our, our hot and sunny climate, friends of mine will actually add zinc oxide, essentially what you find in sunscreen, to their glazing putty. So as they're, just as they're going, they'll add just a little bit to the putty before they apply it. And the type of paint you use might also impact that as well. I mean, everyone has their preference. I like acrylic-based paint personally. It tends to have really nice, hard finish when it's dry to protect against weathering. But I think, I mean, the zinc will help with that because you want to make sure that the glazing itself is in good condition too before you paint over it. But I can also ask that question to my friends and get some advice too. I hope that helped. All righty. Okay. So here's some more really sad glazing and paint issues. I will say that if you do find yourself having to remove caulking from your sashes, this tool here is amazing. My friend Gus from New Orleans recommended it, and it's literally a tool that you would use to remove caulking from a tub or other, that sort of thing. And you can get this at Home Depot or Lowe's, but it has saved me so many tears. Because I mean, I've broken glass and it's not fun. So if you can pick one of these up, I think it was like $2 or $3. I might be very low estimating, but it wasn't very expensive by any means. But otherwise, removing glazing is can be tedious. Like I said, if you can do a steam box, that's awesome. I do not have one. That's something that I'm going to look into maybe. It is, whoops. I think I saw the question pop up. I think it is called just a caulk removal tool. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. It's very simple. And yeah, and so like on this example, this glazing, I mean, this is old glazing. I don't think this was caulking. Sometimes if it's already kind of pulling away, you can sometimes just use your hands to get that out of there. Otherwise, a really dull chisel sometimes works, and just patience. Patience is going to be your best friend in some cases. And if you break the glass, I know it's terrible and heartbreaking, but remember that can be replaced. Whether it's old historic glass or not, it can be replaced. And here is what new glazing putty looks like. And this is probably I have a love-hate relationship with glazing. I love doing it. It makes me feel really good, like knowing that almost just doing that, the window looks so much better. But as you can see here, you want to get a nice smooth line, and it's, I mean, depending on your definition of perfection, for me, it's just never going to be 100% perfect, but I have to get over myself on those things. But here are just some examples of what a good glazing bead is supposed to look like. And then here, and again, this is something I'll have in the other slide up here in the top right corner is a putty knife, which again, you can get those at the big box stores, and that's what you would use to apply your glazing putty.
Katie, we have a question.
Yes.
What is your preferred method of preparing the glazing beds?
So, like repairing them, or just
like prepping them for new glazing?
Gotcha. So, so for the glazing rabbit, I'll talk about that too. So for the glazing rabbit, where the glass actually will sit in the sash, first I'll make sure that all of the, old glazing is out of there, and sand them down a little bit, and then I prime my sashes before I do any glass installation and glazing, and I prime the rabbit as well. And so once that's dry and done, I'll put a glazing, I'll put putty on the rabbit, around the rabbit. And then when I install the glass, I'll, push down so I get that squeeze out, and you get the putty will create a good seal between the rabbit and the glass. And then then you secure it with glazing points. And then you put your top coat of glazing. Sometimes I'll add the zinc, sometimes if I've got it. If not, it's okay. And then, once you put, you get all your glazing there around the sash, then with your putty knife, you just smooth it out and get rid of the excess. In hindsight, I wish I would have done a recording of doing that, but there are copious amounts of videos out there that do show that. Probably much better than I do it, but I hope, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. We have one more before moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny sees videos of people using a heat gun to remove glazing. Is that something you use at times? I know you mentioned the steamer as some other method.
Yeah, so that a heat gun is on my wish list. I don't have one, but again, it's something that I've seen used often, and it does work very well. There's I think the company is called EcoStrip. They sell a couple of different versions or models rather of heat guns that work really well, and different like tools that you can use to, like, once you're heating it up, you can easily remove the glazing. But yeah, no, heat guns, I mean, if you use them correctly, you don't risk breaking the glass easily either. That's a great question. Okay, any other questions before we move along? Okay. Okay, and so here, I know we had some questions, or a question about glazing and helping it to keep from cracking. But I do want to share just some glazing types that are out there, glazing putty types and brands. DAP 33 tends to be the most readily available at the big box stores. It's kind of controversial among the professionals. It's not a terrible product, in my opinion. It gets the job done. It does take a very long time to cure enough where you can actually paint the sash. And I'm talking like 20 to 30 days long. And if you're doing it professionally, even if you're doing it, sorry, I'm really dark. If you're doing it professionally, or even if you're just doing it to, you know, get your windows functioning in your own house, like you don't want to wait 30 days before you can paint your sash and get it hung and back and get everything, you know, secure again. But it's easy to tool. So when you apply it and you run your putty knife, it usually is pretty smooth. Just keep in mind that it is kind of sticky though, and does take a long time to cure. Crawford's Painter's Putty is another one that you can find at Home Depot and Lowe's. This one's a little bit better in terms of dry time. I think it takes a few weeks. And it's when you open it, it'll have a layer of water, and so you just be sure to dump out the water. And then usually I'll use a putty knife to kind of dig out a little bit and work it with my hands to get it, get it pliable. And it tools really well. And then Sarco Type M Multi-Glaze. This one's my favorite. It's there's one place in San Antonio that I know that sells it called Pintura Paint Store. Pintura Paint Store. And they're off of Vance Jackson and 410, I believe. And they sell this and the Avatron I talked about. It's you can also get it on, you know, directly from Sarco, Amazon, all those types of places. It's heavy, so you're gonna pay a lot for shipping. That's the only downside, in my opinion, if you don't get it locally. But the multi-glaze, the Type M multi-glaze, will cure within like 2 to 3 days. So it does have a very quick cure time where it'll develop a skin enough for you to paint it. And again, if you're doing this professionally, time is money. So you want a good quality product, but that's gonna, you know, keep you on your schedule. A few that are not pictured, Aqua Glaze. I personally have not tested this one out. I haven't even looked for it, so I don't know if it's one that you can find readily available. And then homemade putty, yes, that's a thing. My friend Scott Seidler, the Craftsman blog guy, he has a recipe on his website where you can make your own putty. I believe it's just linseed oil and calcium carbonate, so like chalk dust. You mix that up into a dough, and there you go. Might be something to try one day. All right. So another common issue that many folks will come across are broken sash cords. And they tend to look like this. And you think all is lost, right? Just get rid of those windows. The good news is it's actually one of the simpler things to repair on wood windows. And I will show you how. So first of all, you probably wonder, unless you've done this before, how in the world do I access the weights? So when I first did this, when I first started doing this, I pulled off the casing on the outside of the house, which you can certainly do, but it's hard, and just if it's hot outside, you want to be outside. It's more work than it's worth. And so then, as I learned the proper way to do this, it kind of dawned on me that, you know, you look, say, for example, you look at a brick building like this one here on the right, it doesn't have casing on the outside. So how in the world are you going to access those weights unless you do it from the inside? Which, I mean, yeah, you can take off this beautiful wood casing, but it's, again, I wouldn't recommend it unless you absolutely have to pull this off to address something else. It's just, again, it's more work than it's really worth. Then you risk, you know, having to re-nail it and maybe pull off wallpaper. You know, no thanks. So again, here was one of my experiences. So, you know, I didn't realize that you can go in through the side. So I ended up, and this is on the porch again. pulled off this piece of casing, which more than likely this is probably original, or at least of the time period of the house. It's true dimensions, and just trying to nail it back on there instead of making new holes, because that seemed almost impossible. You just have to line up the existing holes to get it back to go back on there. I mean, you can certainly do it this way if you prefer. That's your prerogative, but I'm going to show you a much easier way that will save you time and tears. Do a lot of crying, just kidding. Okay, so I've got another little video here. Hopefully this demonstrates at least where to start. So on your sash windows, you will have an interior stop, typically on either side of the sash here. And it's just a trim piece that holds that bottom sash into place. And it goes all the way up. Sometimes you'll have a nice profile. It may just be a simple profile. Every house is different. So you want to use one of these neat little flat bars. This is about, I think, 12 inches long, and you can get these at the big box stores. They're about $5 a piece. And you just take this little guy, and I usually go in on the back side if you can, just to avoid gouging the profile. If you go in on the front side there, you can. I would just, be careful before you do that. And I cheated this one. It's a little loose, so it was a little easier to demonstrate. And then, just start where you can, and essentially you're going to work your way up or down wherever you start. And I recommend to pull the bar towards the towards the trim instead of outward, like towards you, to avoid breaking it. And breakage will happen. It's just, if you can avoid it, please do. Because if this were to break, we can get it, we can have a lumber yard match it, the profile, or just, switch out do a different profile. And then this will just pop off. There we go. We just set it aside. And then, so that will free up the sash to be removed from the frame. Sometimes though, if your windows are painted shut, they haven't been opened in decades, you'll want to use your flat bar to basically help get those two unstuck and use it as leverage. And so these were not painted shut, but you can see here just kind of the concept, I hope, of that. And you can use a utility blade as well to help break up that paint, just to make it a little easier to get out of there. And so once you've done that, the sash should lift up, and then you pull it outward. Hopefully, I think you guys can hopefully see that. And so once the bottom sash is out, then you'll need to remove the top sash. And I've got a video here that I borrowed from my friend Steve Quillian's YouTube channel. Because you'll have, let's see, that's the video. There will be, once the sash comes out, there's what's called a parting bead that runs basically the length of the frame, and that's what separates the top and bottom sash, and then between the two interior and exterior stops to create that track where the windows operate and are able to go up and down. Okay, so to avoid having to remove the exterior stops, if you don't have to, you can use the flat bars that we talked about, or that I showed you in a couple of videos, to remove the parting bead, so you can get that the top sash out. And so I'm going to play this, and I'm just going to narrate this for you because I don't think the sound will work very well. So Steve is saying that the parting bead needs to come out, and you just use the flat bar here. And so he basically gets it in between where the sash and that parting bead meet. And then you use a second pry bar to finish pulling that out. And these are very prone to breaking. These, honestly, I'm not super worried about breaking. Yes, it's frustrating because then you have to make a new piece. If you have a table saw, these are pretty easy to fabricate. I believe the standard dimension is like a quarter, or no, I'm sorry, 1/2 inch by 3/4 of an inch. And so they're pretty easy to, to rip from like a 1x4 if you need to. A friend of mine who was working on her own windows was able to find like pre-cut ones at Home Depot, which I was kind of surprised, but hey, you get what you can get. So the reason that the parting bead needs to be removed is because when you make your cut in the side of the frame, that parting bead needs to come out of there so you can make your cut, and then that'll get it'll get hidden when you reinstall the parting bead. And so I'm going to show you a really neat tool that I like to use. Just have to pretend that the top sash is still in there. But it really helps to get a good grip on the parting bead. And this tool, again, you can find it at, I think I found this at Harbor Freight. It's a welding tool of all things, but it does great job. Let's see if this will work. I sped this up a little bit because otherwise we would be sitting here for like 5 minutes. So you take this little tool, and it's got like a duckbill. So it's got 2 flat pieces and a vice grip handle. And you just kind of work your way. So like if you pretend that top sash is still in there, like you could work enough where you could get the little pry bar up in there, and then use a second pry bar to push up against that top sash to get that removed. So here, this is a multi-tool, and other friends of mine use jigsaws. They use this. I've seen them use a portable or cordless circular saw. Oh, my video's freezing up a little bit. But the bottom line is that you can make a what's called a weight pocket door in the frame to give you easier access to the weight. I usually do, I would say between a little over a foot, just to be safe, depending on how long the weights are. And I mean, you can do it as high up as you want, as low as you want. Usually kind of low to middle is good. And you'll want to make 2 horizontal cuts, usually at a 45-degree angle, and then 2 vertical cuts. And hopefully you can see this. It says it's buffering on my end. And otherwise, though, I've got some other pictures that kind of illustrate this. And so then you make your cut in where the parting bead was. Usually I like to run it along the far side. Let's see, Robin asked, why a 45? That's a great question. So when you make your cut and you pull the little door off, when you put it back on, you want to make sure that it's at an angle. Otherwise, it won't have anything to stop it from falling into the frame. And I've got a picture after this guy here. And so once you make your door, then you can access your weight. This was taking forever to get cut just because that wood is old, and I would have been there forever. But I've got some pictures here I can illustrate what I mean. And then you can rehang your weight. And get your sash back to work. Okay. So here you can see, and hopefully this illustrates this. So here's, what it looked like without, and then here's my little door. And so you can kind of see this one is not at the best angle. This was the first one I did. So I learned quickly that just having it at an angle where, because when you reinstall it, I usually prefer to do a countersunk screw to make it easier for the next person that comes along, just so it's easier for them to pull off that door, change the weight or the cord, and be done with it. So the 45 degrees is gonna create that that piece where your screw or your nail can catch onto and secure that door back onto the frame. Like I said, if you did just a horizontal cut, when you go back to put it back into the hole, it's gonna fall. There's nothing for it to stop it from going back into the frame there. I hope that answers your question. Okay, and then here are just some pictures of what the pulleys, and these are called pulleys, or the way the sash cord runs. And at first I was like, the person who did this is a monster, because you can't pull these out from the other side, like if one's damaged or if you're trying to get paint off of them. But it occurred to me that, obviously that's there so they don't fall out. A lot of the ones I've seen, they're painted over like this, so they're not going anywhere. But others are, I've seen some that are nailed or screwed in, or they're in there with pressure, or they have little, for lack of a better term, like teeth. So when they do go in, the teeth catch on the wood and prevent them from pulling out again. I have not, I've removed a little bit of paint from mine, but if they're really, really stuck like that, again, just patience and paint remover, paint thinner, WD-40. You just have to work at it to get it working again. Because the other thing, is this here, like you'd be looking at, if you took off the casing, like you saw in the other picture, it would expose this to where you could remove that pin to get these to pull out and replace them. But again, you have to remove the casing. So there's really no easy way to replace these that I'm aware of. Okay, and then here are just some other examples of kind of easy things to spot visually when you're looking at sashes to assess what needs to be done and condition. So this one here, this is actually from a friend who I helped on a property here in New Braunfels. And you can see at the bottom here, the lower rail here is failing. Probably, I believe it was there's a nail in here, and I've got some close-ups of other ones that I'll show you. But usually the joints were, I'll see nails. Sometimes they were just done with wood pegs, which is traditional, glue, those kind of things. And so, again, you might see this and think, oh my gosh, what do I do? And at that time, I was kind of like that. I was like, wow, how am I going to fix this? But and sometimes, I'd rather do it on my own house and not for somebody else. But you may just have to play around with it and find the best solution. Or if you're like me and you collect sash, you might have sash laying around your house you can practice on. So you can see here, in addition to the meeting rail failing, the glazing is in bad shape. There's paint buildup here. All, you know, those things too. Glass is dirty. And so you can see a little bit better here. So you can kind of see here where there's a nail. You can see it kind of split the wood here. So quite honestly, the easiest way to fix this is removing the glass, just to avoid breakage. And then the other thing, once you remove this nail to free the lower rail here, you're going to have to reset it. And so it's easier to work on the sash when there's no glass in there, because again, you're going to avoid breaking it, assuming you don't break it, trying to get it out of the sash. Again, patience is going to be your best friend, and it's worth it. And so the way to remove this nail, I was taught to use a punch, and you can get these at Home Depot and Lowe's as well, or online. They come in different sizes. I think the pack I bought had like 3 or 4 different gauges, and you just find the one that is, you know, a little bit smaller if you can to what's there, and then just drive it out onto another piece of wood with a hammer. And then that backing wood is going to catch the nail where you can easily just pull it out of there. And then just use a like a rubber mallet or something, then to kind of you'll tap the lower rail here out of the joint so you can assess kind of what's going on. Dang, that glazing is rough. All right. So here, these are different sashes, but just some other kind of in progress conditions. You can see here this guy, what he looked like before I got to him, and this is an after, just after I've scraped the paint down, did a little bit of filling, but not everything yet. And then here, this picture here on the far right, you can kind of see what I was talking about better with the nail holes. This one had 2. And so again, you just drive them out with a punch. And that it's a mortise and tenon joint typically on these sash windows. And so when you pull the rail here out, there will be a tenon, wood tenon, like here. And so then, you know, when you resecure it, I like to use wood pegs. It's easy, and I don't run the risk of it like nails rusting and things like that. You can use nails. I would say, I think galvanized or something that's not going to rust easily, if you can help it. And then this is just an example of caulking. It looks so bad, but paint's been removed and all that. Okay, and just some other examples. I think I like showing the examples of like rough windows, because I've seen rough and they can be repaired. Again, it takes a little bit of patience, but once you've done it a few times and, you know, find your groove. I mean, not always, but you know, sometimes I can get a sash done in a day. Maybe not fully painted, but at least, you know, fixed, glazed, primed, and then I have to let the glazing fully cure. But then, you know, a few days later or the next weekend, I can take it, paint it, let it dry, rehang it. And then there's this, you know, just again, glazing issues, the rail is falling. And then here are some in progress and before and afters. So the really bad window was just around the corner over here. on the side of the house. And these two here, this one, the one in red obviously is fully done. And then this one is in progress here. But I think this is a great kind of side-by-side comparison, in my opinion. Just to see, again, you know, here's what it looked like and here's the potential. And then there's that window unit that used to be there, but is no longer. And then just some more in progress photos. And this is my backyard garage area. As you can see, I've got a lot of window weights and sash. A lot of these actually came from a house here in New Braunfels. A friend of mine does contracting work. He's on the Historic Landmark Commission with me. And he called me one day and was like, hey, I've got these windows that this homeowner doesn't want to keep. And of course, I'm like, well, can you talk them into keeping them, please? And of course, he just was like, they don't want to deal with it. I'm like, fine. And so my boyfriend and I took his truck and went and picked up all of these sash and the weights. And then these two like full size windows, screens, just, I should start my own shop. But I mean, I use them for practice, and things like that. So just thought I would share that just because it's like, whoa, crazy to look at. Okay, so here are some tools to help get you started. I talked about the putty knife. They come in flex and stiff, whatever your preference is. I like the flex. Stiff is good too. Again, it's just, you know, maybe get one of each and see which one you like better. The 12-inch flat bar here, again, that's going to be your best friend when taking the windows apart. And then utility blade is going to be needed too. I saw a question pop up, but I missed it.
We have a few from Jenny asking fantastic questions. The first one is, what do you do to cover window openings while you're in progress of repairing a window?
Yes, so plywood is really common. Usually you'll want to get 2 pieces and like sandwich them in the opening. And I've seen folks where they'll do like they'll do 2 and they'll do either a piece of board on either side to have it catch, and then just do a carriage bolt just to make it secure. That's what most of the professionals do, is just plywood, and then you could even paint them the same color as the house to not make it so obvious that you have a window opening void.
Awesome. And another question from Jenny. And Jenny, I realize you're part of a core in Minnesota, so you may not like Katie's answer to this question.
Oh no.
What time of year do you typically do window repair?
What type of year or what time of year?
Time of year.
I mean, it's for us, aside from the snow last week, I mean, when it's like springtime, when it's warm, I mean, I personally try to do it, you know, nice days. The warmer the weather, the quicker your glazing putty is going to cure. And then too, if you have to do any kind of epoxy work, specifically the Abitron does better in warmer temperatures as far as being pliable, curing quickly. So, I mean, I would recommend, at least here in Texas, to do it in the warmer months. I mean, I have friends in the you know, on the East Coast and in the northern states, like they'll do window work year round, but of course they have like big shops where they can take their sash or the sash that they're working on to the shop. It's heated, it's nice. I don't have like our garage is not heated, so I try not to work in the cold when I can help it, but sometimes I get a wild hair
Okay, one more. David needs weights. His are missing. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes. So other than salvaging weights, I mean, honestly, what weights do you need? I might have them. I don't know if that's allowed, but other than that, there are like, you can buy weights, or you can make your own. Maybe Steph, if you can do a quick search. I know Steve has made his own before, but that's another option too. And if you're not familiar with the actual weight that you need, like the poundage, just weigh your sash with the glass and everything in it and divide by 2. So you'll get so if you have a 10-pound sash, you'll need 5 pounds on either side to counter that weight. Any more questions, Steph?
Not at the moment. Thank you. Those are great.
Great. Additional tools, and once I stop sharing my PowerPoint screen here, I can show you better some of the tools that I use. It won't be so small there on my screen. But paint scraper and replacement blades, the tools the scrapers that I have, I use a carbide blade. It's dual-sided, so you can switch it out pretty easily, and it'll last a little while. They're really sharp. They're it's a really good material. Sandpaper, various grits, anywhere from like 60 to 120. 60 and 80 you're going to use to kind of remove flaking paint, stuff like that. 100 to 120 you'll use to finish out what you've done. So like once you've primed your sash, let that dry, and then you do want to hit it with sandpaper just to smooth it out. So when you put the final coat on, it's going to be nice and smooth. You won't have as many bumps. It'll just be a nice presentation. Respirator, I talked about those. The filters that you want to look for should be rated, I believe, P100 or N100 for lead particles. Work gloves, safety glasses or goggles, latex or nitrile gloves. These are good to have when you're applying your glazing putty or dealing with the wood epox. They're not toxic, but it's minimizing the mess. 8 to 10-ounce hammer, things like that. Materials. I thought there was one other picture there, but I guess not. I talked about the Abitron, the sash cord that I like, and you can honestly with sash cord, as long as it's mostly a cotton blend versus like nylon, it'll last you a while. Because if you do mostly like nylon's going to stretch, and eventually it'll stretch and stretch and stretch and hit the bottom plate of your window. Excuse me. And then when you go to open your window, the weights are already down there, and so it won't do what you want it to do. You can also do chain. I've mostly seen chain in commercial type buildings like post offices, rail stations, places like that, where it's more, it's a public building. People are gonna, be in there more often. I think it's more of a decorative thing. Or if you have huge sashes that are big, chain might be a little bit better and sturdy, just to carry the weight of the weights. But I mean, if you want to do chain, that's great too. But the sash cord that I like is called Samson Spot Cord, and it's SAMSON, Samson Spot Cord. I have not seen this at Lowe's or Home Depot. It may be something they can order. Otherwise, you can get it on Amazon, like everything else, or other vendors that specialize in old house, like hardware and things like that. Some other resources that I would recommend, the Window Sash Bible. This is by Steve Jordan, and Save America's Windows by John Leake. I know both of these men and they are amazing. The really cool thing too is they're really accessible on social media. So, I mean, if you go on Facebook or Instagram, I know both are on Facebook. I don't know if they have Instagrams though, but I'll have a link here for some of the different Facebook groups that are public, and you can join them, and you could just at them. And if you have questions, the Old House group, I mean, there's window window questions daily, and I see them commenting with suggestions and things, so that's kind of fun. And these I looked before earlier today. I was hoping they would be available at the San Antonio Public Library, but they're not, and I was really sad. But you can get them Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all those places. And then here are just some helpful links and other resources. The Window Preservation Alliance is really good. In addition to our Rehabber Club, they also have a list of window preservation professionals across the country. And it's just another resource if, like, say if somebody's not on our Rehabber Club list and you need other recommendations or other folks, you can check out this website. Again, it's not necessarily a recommendation like for the actual people. Well, I guess it's, I don't know how to say it. It's, I mean, it's a resource. There we go. But I guess it's not like city endorsed, but Katie on her own knows a lot of these people, and they're really great. There's also the Rehabber Club, which is an entity with the city of San Antonio. It's one of our initiatives. And there are local folks on this list who have participated in our workshops and other events. And so that's another resource. The Facebook groups I was talking about, Artisan Army is a public one. Steve Quillian with Wood Window Makeover manages this one. And it's a public group. Again, anybody can join. You can ask questions specific to Windows. And then Our Old House, again, this is just one that I'm a part of, and a lot of my fellow window colleagues and friends are also in this. Again, I think it's public and anybody can join, as long as you have an old house or otherwise. Not that they really check, I don't think, but again, it's a really good place for just getting feedback, and a lot of the window folks will be very eager to point you in the right direction as far as best practices, materials, things like that. And then the Window Preservation Standards Collaborative is another group. They are developing kind of ongoing development of window standards for preservation, and it's a fun group. And a lot of the folks in these groups and the window preservation, like everybody is in multiple groups together, so we run across each other. It's fun. And here is my contact information. So here is my office phone number and email, and then our website is sapreservation.com. And then if you want, I'm on Instagram at Preservation Gal, and you can, I haven't posted in a while, but I'm probably going to start working on my windows again as the weather gets nicer. And I tend to post about what I'm doing. So if you're inclined, you're welcome to follow me and ask me questions. If I don't know the answer, I can certainly find out for you or point you in the right direction. And I'll leave this up here for just a moment, and then we can also drop that stuff in the chat if you guys want. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can show you the tools if you want to see them.
Katie, while you're grabbing those, I have some questions for you. How do you know if your windows are single or double hung?
So that is a good question. The easiest way that I have found to know this is if you're looking at the exterior of your window, you should have exterior trim pieces on the outside, basically, that are holding the top sash in place. Older houses, like 1850s old, that may not have had weights at that time, it's rare that I'll see stops, basically because that top sash isn't operable. There's no need for it to be, like, there's nothing that needs to hold it in place because it's not going to move. The other way is to, try to get it unstuck, so it'll function. But generally, if you have an older house that was built by 1900, more than likely they're going to be double hung as well. More than likely, not guaranteeing that. So let me. Okay.
Katie,
Yes.
a few more. We're getting a lot of really good questions.
Awesome.
So Carissa has kind of a unique situation. She has a 1916 Prairie style home. The windows were painted white at some point in the 50s or 60s, and then the previous owners to her stripped the paint and returned them to a brown color, but stained them instead of painting, both on the exterior and the interior.
Wow.
She was wondering what part of the painting staining can be done with the window in place and which part the sashes should be removed for. And if you would recommend staining, like continuing to stain on both the exterior and the interior.
Gotcha. Personally, I find it easier, I say easier. If you want the windows to open and to function, and to avoid, if you paint them or stain them in place, you run the risk of basically they'll stick, and so they won't easily open. So if you can, I would say remove them from the opening to paint or stain them, and then let them fully dry enough where you can then reinstall them and rehang them to where they you're not going to ruin the paint job, but then also you're not going to run the risk of basically painting them shut again if you've done all the work to get them functioning. As far as staining them, that is really unique to have them stained on the exterior, because I would think that wouldn't protect them as much from the elements. I don't have a good answer for that. I'm sorry. I would say, maybe to avoid having to like strip all that, the stain off of there, maybe keep staining them, or if it's not too much of a hassle, like remove that stain, sand them, and then paint them. I would say it's kind of personal preference at this point.
One more question. Can you reglaze the window without removing the sash from the window frame?
Yes, you sure can. Depending on, again, just in my experience, depending on the level of glazing that's like missing, you could certainly spot glaze, which essentially, so like say if you only have small pieces of glazing missing, but the rest of it is in decent shape and like solid, you could go in and just apply the glazing to the spots that are missing and glaze it in place. I would say if probably more than 40 or 50% is gone or needs to be replaced, it's at least for me, it's easier to work on a flat surface, especially if you have a 2-story house, instead of like setting up scaffolding and ladders and just from a safety standpoint too. But the answer is yes, you can. Again, just be safe about it.
And I'm just going to answer one question really quick about subsidies for San Antonians to fix their windows. I want to give a shout out to the Conservation Society of San Antonio. They have an annual building grant for just that purpose. And if you're in a historic district or live in a local landmark, there is also a historic tax incentive for substantial rehabilitation, which is designed to offset the cost of rehabbing a home over a 10-year period. So I'm going to drop both Katie and my email addresses in the chat so y'all can email us with any of those questions in the future. Show us those tools, Katie.
So one that I wanted to share, but I don't think I did, is this fun little tool. This is a glazing point driver, and this is what you would use to secure the glass once you've bedded it back into the sash. You add these little points around the glass to hold it in place. You don't have to have one of these. This was just like, I really wanted one because I wanted to be fancy. I need to send it back to Scott Seidler to get refurbished, or he cleans them up and makes it look new again. But you can, so the other option, and a lot of times this is much more accessible. You can buy points at Home Depot or Lowe's, and there's a little tool, which I didn't bring inside with me, but essentially it's you push in the points, and it's the same concept. It's just, this is more like a shooter, whereas the other one's by hand. So you do whatever is comfortable for you or within your budget.
Katie?
Yes.
What types of points do you use?
So mine, the ones that are on my point driver, they're diamond points. I think they're probably too small for me to show. That's empty. So never, wait, no, there it goes. There it is. I don't know how good this is going to be, but they're little diamonds. I forget the gauge. I'm like bad at this today, guys. Sorry. But the diamond points come in that this is the smaller of the two. There's this, and there's a bigger one for bigger sash. And then the ones at Home Depot or Lowe's, they look a little bit different. I think they're more for like picture framing, but you can like snap off the back just so it'll be flush, and use it that way. And I don't have any of those with me, but if you go to Home Depot's website and look, type in glazing points, that should come up. Any other questions about points or glazing things? So this is the other tool that I used for removing the parting bead. So you can see it has a vice grip handle, and then two, I call them duck bills, but two little flat bar pieces like that. Again, this when you buy this, you can get this individually, or you can buy it as part of a set of welding tools. The other two I've never used because I don't weld, but this has come in handy for removing that parting bead. Let's see, this is also a fun tool. It's a window zipper. This helps remove or cut the paint from the sash or your stops. Anywhere where you need to cut the paint, cut the paint line. This is a really great tool. This, I don't know if I think Harbor Freight sells these. I don't remember if Home Depot or Lowe's does, but it's not very expensive at all. It's a little less invasive than like a utility blade, because there have been times where I'm like trying to cut the paint line and I miss, and I gouge whatever piece of wood is there, and it's no fun. So this is easier. And then my little flat bar, I showed you guys that. And then this is also helpful. This is a nail puller. It's kind of like a farrier or horseshoe tool. But this is helpful too, because if you have, once the sash comes out or you've got your trim off of there, you'll have nails. So it's quick to to get those nails out of there. And then this is the respirator I was talking about. So it goes like that. And then you have the filters. Again, just make sure you get them rated for lead paint, which again, I think is P100 or N100. And you can always look on the package, it'll tell you. And that's all the tools I brought in that I could think of that were fun. Are there any more questions? I hope everybody got something out of this. I know virtual window restoration is unique, and I wasn't going to teach you guys how to restore windows in I guess an hour, hour and a half or so.
We have a really great ending question.
Yeah.
What helped you and motivated you to learn this process when you started? This is coming from a board member of an organization that teaches preservation trade skills to 18 to 25-year-olds.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great question. So quite honestly, I started doing this when actually, I think the window right behind me, the glass in the top sash was slipping because I think the lower rail had slipped. And my boyfriend and I decided one Saturday to tackle it, and that's how that started. And then also honestly working with OHP and realizing that, you know, we get a lot of questions and requests to replace windows. And I thought, okay, if I'm advising people not to replace them, it would be really helpful if I, you know, actually had the hands-on boots on the ground experience, you know, fixing or knowing that they can be fixed and what that entails. And I fell in love with it. And yeah, that's all she wrote. And here I am.
Everyone on the call that hasn't met Katie in person or virtually yet, she is like the best window restoration evangelist and does such a great job convincing people that it's the right thing to do. So I definitely encourage y'all reaching out to her if you have any more questions, like now or like way in the future. Like I know Katie is one of the people that is just eager to help with all of these questions. So thank you, Katie, for sharing your knowledge.
Oh, sure. No problem. And thanks everybody for joining us. I know we ran, I can't believe it's 7 o'clock already. But I hope it was engaging. We will probably send out, Steph, correct me, we'll send out an email with a survey, correct? For feedback.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll work on that. Probably expect that next week in your inbox at some point. And then we'll also work on getting this video uploaded and have a link as well for those who want to rewatch it, or maybe those who were unable to join us today. So with that, if there are no more questions, I will let everybody go. Thank you again for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us next month. March, I believe our next event is talking about local and state tax incentives. And so that'll be with Rachel Retaliata with our office, and Valerie, oh no, I forgot her last, Valerie with Texas Historical Commission.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.